This has got to be my most asked for video, and I'm sorry it's taken me so long. I've been kind of waiting for a day when my studio was relatively tidy, but I've just come to the conclusion that that's never really going to happen. So this is as good as it's going to get, I think. So I thought, let's do the tour because so many of you have been asking for it. And since I've had my new storage for crafts, I've really been itching to kind of show you how much better it all is. I've got previous videos showing how it was before, so you can always look back at those. But before I had the storage for crafts units, I had a big sideboard there, which was really a total waste of space. So let's start from scratch. So this is my craft studio. It's basically a summer house at the end of my garden, and it is 12 foot by 12 foot. So it's a decent size. Obviously I filled it to the point of, you know, not being able to cram any more in, but that's what we do, isn't it? So so as you come through the door, this is my fabulous storage for crafts storage. I've got 2 units. I'll put in the description box all the details. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll put all the details of which units I've got. I've added an extra one of these 12 by 12 boxes in here, because once I put this all together, the gap that it leaves you for a machine, I didn't need the whole height of it because I've put my switch in there, which isn't that high. So I adjusted the shelves because you can move all the shelves around. So I bought an extra box to go there and adjusted the shelves so I could maximise that space. But it's great because I've got, let me tell you what I've got in here. So in this one, I've got my switch machine in the gap there. I've actually got a couple of empty boxes there, which is absolutely insane to think. And then I've got all my Tracy Hay papers towards the bottom. This one has got some sort of storage wallets and things like that in it. All of my Himmy paints are in these big 12 by 12s, and my watercolours are in the bottom 2 of those. So that's that half. And then this side, I've got all sorts of things really. I've got all my cinch bits and bobs in the bottom there. I've got Sizzix felt there. I've got kind of MDF bits and bobs. The top 2 at the end here are lots of Tim Holtz kind of all the accessories, you know, the little bits and bobs of ephemera and all that kind of stuff. I've got all the boards that I take to Hobbymaker with all my, when I show what embossing folders are, I keep all of those there. And then in this section I've got lots of spare envelopes and some samples, I think. So that's kind of what's in there, and I've really could fit more in there. None of those containers are sort of full to the brim really, so it's quite nice to think that I'm not bursting at the seams anymore. And then of course I've got the top for storage as well. So the grey boxes there are generally things that are going out of the room. So when I'm going to Hobbymaker, I put my kind of demos in there so that I can just grab the box and go out to the car. I use the centre part as a sort of little photography area. And then I've got my Deflecto washi tape storage on the top of here. I've got 2 of these. You probably see them when I bring this top on with me to Hobbymaker when we're doing Deflecto shows. And I love it because I can see my washi tape. It looks nice. I've got my lovely old vintage camera on the top, so the whole area looks nice. And then I've got some sort of vintage buttons and things there, and just some little accessories. So this area looks nice as well as being practical, and I was kind of missing that before. I had so much stuff crammed in here, I didn't have any room for anything that wasn't completely practical, whereas now I've got a little bit of space for a few nice looking things. And that's a piece I made at a workshop a few years back. So that's my storage for craft area, which has got a lot of my supplies. Then I've got these IKEA shelves here in this corner with most of my acrylic paints, my Tonic Nouveau drops. Then I've got all my Sizzix sequins, and I just think that all looks lovely. And of course I use these because I can see them. So I like to have as much out on show as I can, because otherwise I forget I've got it. But then I don't want everything out because it just gets messy and, you know, just looks like a jumble sale. So I think I've got the balance quite right really. Then this back wall, I've got all my sort of mixed media gessos and pastes and things there. Then my markers, I've got all of the pro markers, and then I've got a good selection of Copics, and then I've got some Studio Light markers there as well. And then this area here is kind of my to-do area. So when I've got shows coming up, what you can see here is all the products ready to go for a Sizzix show I've got to prep for the next couple of weeks. We're doing a show with all the Sizzix studio stuff, so I've got all the paints there and all of the sets that are going to be on the show all ready to go. And then I do myself a little sheet there, so I plan my demos. Then next to it, I have all the things that I use all the time. So I've got a good supply of watercolour card here so I can grab it. And then I've got a container full of card blanks. And then along the back is all my Sizzix cardstock. I chop it in half to A5 and then I keep it in rainbow order in these tubs. So as I'm prepping, I can just grab them. And then along the back, I've got my distress pins there and all of my blending brushes mostly, but then I've got a few pens either end as well. So that's kind of directly behind where I'm working. And if I come back a little bit, I can show you, this is my working area. I was going to wait till I had a clear desk to film this, but I realised that wasn't going to happen. So you can see here I've got all the bits and bobs. I'm just about to start prepping for a Sizzix show. So I've got all my supplies out and I've kind of got a few finished samples ready. And I'm literally ready to start working on that. So this is my main working area. Got my Sizzix Big Shot here, and along the back I've got all of the sort of tools that I use all the time, like paintbrushes, and then I've got a spinning storage thing there where I keep all of my essentials in. And then I've got these little ceramic dishes here that I keep a few bits and bobs in. These are the kind of things that I use on every card, so I like to just have them out really. And then I use that little green pot there for rubbish so that I can then transfer it to the bin. And then on the back, the whole length of this back wall, I've got Alex, are they Alex? No, yeah, I think they're called Alex, drawers from IKEA. I've got one cupboard at the end. That's just full of, I've got adhesive rolls in there, and I've got baby wipes, that kind of stuff. And then the drawers, I won't go through them all in this video. I have done a video before where I've literally gone through every drawer, so you can refer back to that. But I've basically got all the sort of essential things in these drawers. I've got all of my glues in here. This one's got embossing powders and tools. I've got watercolour card in one of these. So they're all full. The top ones here are all full of embossing powders. So I've got a good amount of storage there in all of those. And then continuing along the back wall, this is a relatively new addition. I've got these Crafter's Companion ink storage, and I've got all of my distress. I've got all of the oxides, so that's the top few rows. The distress inks in the full size, I haven't got all of the colours yet, which is mad really, considering they're the ones that have been about the longest, but I just never bought all of the colours. The oxides, because they came out later, I literally bought them as they were released. But I do need to go through and fill in the gaps with the normal distress. And then below that, that's all the Lisa Horton ink pads, because they're also square and they all look neat. And then I've got room for more at the bottom. I've got my Caterpillar here, which I use all the time. And then next to it, I've got my Sizzix scoreboard and trimmer. I tend to do most of my cutting on the Caterpillar, and I use my Sizzix for scoring cards and making envelopes, etc. The only time really I use my Sizzix for trimming is if I'm doing something where I need it to be really accurate, because obviously with a rotary trimmer you can't do anything precise, you're just cutting the whole length. So I do use both, but most of my trimming is done on the Caterpillar, and then all of my scoring is done on the Sizzix. Then in this corner I've got cardstock that I use all the time. I've got my Sizzix white cardstock. I've got extra cardstock at the back underneath that splatter box. And then I've got all my Sizzix stencil and stamp bits and bobs there as well. And then I've got some more of those little IKEA shelves here. And this is all my distress sprays, my distress glazes, my ink refills, all of those sort of bits and bobs, and all the spritzes. And then on the bottom shelf I've got a few more Lisa Horton inks. Those are the limited edition ones. I need to label them. And then I've got all of my Catherine Paula in a pile there. I kind of need a better solution for those, but for now that works because I've got them in rainbow order and they're easy enough to grab. Then moving around, I've got this big IKEA Kallax. Well, actually this is older than a Kallax. This is an Expedit because I've had this, gosh, probably coming on 20 years. On the top I've got my embossing folders. Then let me come across this side. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy. Then I've got all of my Tim Holtz Sizzix there. I've got some All and Create ephemera, and then I've got some big envelopes and some All and Create papers that don't quite fit anywhere else. And then I redid all of this quite recently. So for the top, this is a 4x4 cube unit, and the top two, you can see I've taken out the divider because I decided to switch all of my dies and stamps into bigger A5 wallets. And actually I did this before Sizzix started bringing out their products in the bigger wallets anyway, so it's worked out luckily perfectly because I'd bought all of these wallets for my other stamps. I do sell these on Hobbymaker, my Evelyn and Sage. I have got more on order because I know some of you are asking. Once they're back in stock, I'll put a link in the description box to them. So all of my stamps are in these wallets, which work perfectly. These tubs are from Wham. I bought them, I'm in here in the UK, I bought them in B&Q, I think, and they were £4 each. So they're really affordable for storage, and they're what I found was they're quite a good depth. They are actually designed, they do come with a lid, they're for shoe storage, but I found they were the perfect width for A5. So I've got all of my stamps along the top row, and then I've got they also fit the Stampers Anonymous stamps perfectly. This one here, I've still got stamps and Sizzix things that I need to repackage in the A5 wallet, so they're there. And then the next row down is all my dies. So I haven't quite finished, but I've started transferring all of my Sizzix die sets into the A5 wallets. Obviously, as the new sets come out, they're all really ready going to be in wallets, which is lovely. But I've still got a pile to go through. You can see here, I've still got some in the smaller wallets I was using before. And I can get 2 sets of these in one A5 wallet. I've got some carnation dies here, which are already in great big A5 wallets. And then I've got a whole mixture in this end one of sort of studio-like bits and bobs from when I worked for them. I've kind of kept all my favourites that I wanted to hang on to. Then below that, I've got my Sizzix stamps. Then the rest of this really is paper storage. So I've got all of my A4 coloured cardstock in rainbow order, of course. And then my Sizzix stamps at the end. Then the bottom row is all about 12x12s. And the storage I've got here, the trays are Deflecto. You see me bring these onto Hobbymaker every month. The 12x12 clear trays, you fit 6 of those trays in 1 cube, and they're sold in sets of 3 usually on Hobbymaker, so you'll need 2 sets to fill a cube. But you can see that is jam-packed full of cardstock. So I've got 2 cubes full of those. That one is more sort of collections of cardstock. Then Personal Impressions sell 12x12 boxes, and I kind of put collections in those. So this cube here is full of all my 49er Market. So you can see I've still got room for more. And then the other one is mixture. I've got some Ciao Bella and bits and bobs. But the combination of the trays and the boxes works perfectly for your 12x12s. I don't have a ton of 12x12s, but I am getting more because I am kind of getting more and more into particularly the 49er Market collections. So that's my paper storage. And then the rest of the room really is just sort of more boring. It's my office area really. So I've got my printer in that corner. I've got storage above it where I keep all my pearls and bits and bobs. Then I've got some pen storage that just fits in that corner. I've got all my distress crayons there. And then it's my desk. So I work at this glass desk here by the window. And next to that is the last bit of sort of crafty storage. I've got this old filing cabinet that's full of all my ink pads. So I've got Versafine, Archival, I've got all my Memento in one drawer, I've got my Distress watercolour pencils, silencer stamps. So all of my inks mostly are in here, so that's quite good storage for those. I do have some in those, my Distress inks are in those Pink Fresh storage cases there, because I those are the ones I tend to take to Hobbymaker with me, so I keep those in those cases so I can just grab them and go. So let me come back to the door so you can see the whole room. Oh, and I haven't done my desk, have I? My island. So for my main crafting, I'm using this island in the centre of the room. I've got some really good lights above it. I've also, if I show you the beam, this blue thing here is a camera holder, so I can move that down when I'm filming. And then I've got a little bit of storage underneath, which is quite handy. So I've got all the big dies that I use a lot. Then I've got all of my, these are all cutting plates and all the different sort of extra accessories for my big shots. And then at the bottom I've got my We Are Makers stack cutter. That cream box is full of sort of fabrics and things that I might use, and my little sewing box. And then I've got texture roll above that. That funny looking contraption there is a paper drill that I was using when I first started doing my planners, but I very quickly realised that I wasn't really happy with the result from that paper drill, so I probably need to sell that really, because I'm now getting my papers printed and punched professionally. So that's kind of, I guess it's there in case I need to do just a small number myself, but I'll probably get rid of that. So that's an overview of the room. I'll try and put links to as many of the different sort of solutions I've used in the description box below. The storage for crafts, I'll put links to that, and I'll put a link to their website. I can't recommend their storage enough. It has really been a game changer for me in this room. All the Deflecto bits we sell every month on Hobbymaker, so you'll find those there on the Hobbymaker website, but I'll put a link. And then if I think of anything else, I'll add all that in, like the Crafter's Companion stuff. But hopefully that's given you a good look around my room, because it's the video that you all ask me for constantly, and I'm always chatting, obviously, because I do a lot of storage sort of shows on Hobbymaker. I'm always chatting about my storage and my room. So here's the latest video. This is sort of an ongoing thing because I'm always trying to fit more in here, so I'll no doubt be back in 6 months with a little bit of a shift around as I've had to fit more in. But this is it for now. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you don't already to my YouTube channel, and if you've got any questions at all, just leave a comment and I'll get back to you. Thanks for watching. See you soon.